The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome to Marvelous Disney with Aaron Adams, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this week's episode on Wednesday, July 23rd, 2023. And as Mr. Testa likes to say, every show should start with a hearty round of self-congratulations. And after watching last week's episode of Secret Invasion, Aaron and I made a few predictions about what might happen on this week's episode. And Aaron, it turns out we were right.
They spent some money on the actual show.
Well, there's that too, but you know, there were a couple of character predictions we made.
Oh,
but,
yeah, that too. Okay.
Okay, all right. We'll get to that stuff and talk about it in depth on the second half of today's show. But first, when you celebrate the times when you get it right, you also have to be big enough to admit that you kind of got it wrong. And toward that end, do you want to share this email we got from Pascal Lavoie?
I would say Lavoie.
Lavoie. Okay, sorry.
It's one of them French-Canadian things, so I would lean French with it, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Pascal reached out to correct me and just let me know that while we were chatting about the disagreement between Stan Lee, and it wasn't John Romita Sr., it was actually Jack Kirby that were having the disagreement. And he was very sympathetic to my gaffe because we had been talking about the passing of John Romita Sr., and so he was very much top of mind for me. And so, yes, I just spit out the wrong name without thinking. And I have to now bow before the court and say, please have mercy on my soul. It was a simple mistake.
The thing that intrigued me about what Pascal shared, he also dug out a piece of art from a Marvel comic from March of '86, which talked about an actual Captain America musical that was in the works back then. Now, speaking of Rogers the Musical and circling back to Secret Invasion, again, the limited series that Marvel Studios is produced for Disney Plus, and we're 4 episodes in at this point. Did you see that footage that D23 released to social media this past weekend? The one that showed a California Adventure cast member in a full-length, I mean, you know, like from the 40s movie usher outfit. So, first of all, California Sun, very heavy outfit. That would have been hard to wear anywhere.
Sure.
But he's got a Skrull mask on. Because this came from D23, we're supposed to see this. This is one of Disney's official channels. They released it on the 7th. It was probably shot on the 6th and the 5th, which is when, I mean, it's not as hot as what's going on in Southern California right now, but it was in the high 70s, you know, low 80s, and it can't have been pleasant.
Oh, sure.
And speaking of costumes and the sun, you came up with an interesting factoid that was related to the images that were released earlier this week from the actual set of Deadpool 3. You know, they are shooting in the UK right now. In fact, the images we got to see came off of a scene that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman were shooting at a beach somewhere. But
right.
Do you want to describe the outfit we got to see Mr. Jackman in?
I do, but right before we do that, I would like to address a little cited factoid in that video. So, like, they've got Hugh Jackman throwing invisible punches because I don't think Ryan is there, and then he throws, like, what looks like Deadpool's arm, and only arm, through, like, a window, and I think at that point Deadpool jumps through, like, a screen for the effect. If you look at the outside of that building, it's the 20th Century Fox logo all crumbled and on its side. Like someone blew up the 20th Century Fox logo and it decayed, like Planet of the Apes style, right?
Oh.
Yeah, and so there had been some rumors of, is this Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, where he has to go and kill everybody off from the Fox Marvel movies so that he can gain entry into the MCU proper. I don't know what they're going to do with the thing,
Okay,
but
we'll circle back to, because I have some additional info there that
great.
Came out of the what I love about the British newspapers is that they have no scruples whatsoever. So we have some info that the state papers did not have. But anyway.
Okay, so we'll leave that for later. But yeah, if you seek that video, look for the crumbled Fox logo in the background. Now let's get to the costume. Mm-hmm. I was overjoyed that it was the yellow costume that I was hoping for. Mm-hmm. And then as I looked at it, I'm like, well, it's not quite the same. And what leaped out at me at that moment was that Hugh Jackman's arms were covered by sleeves in the costume. And I was like, well, gee, I wonder why they chose to do that, because normally that costume is without sleeves from the top of the shoulders all the way down to his blue gloves. And then it was reading through comments that someone had brought up the fact that Hugh Jackman had a couple of different bouts of skin cancer that he had taken care of, and then he had apparently posted online a little video doing like a public service announcement, warning people about the dangers of skin cancer and make sure that you've got your SPF lotions and such when you go outside. So that explains why, in this case, Wolverine's got sleeves on his costume, because Hugh Jackman, he's going to be filming this scene outside on a beach. No protection from the sun. So, we'll put sleeves on the costume and make sure that the guy doesn't get harmed from bringing this character back that we love so much. That makes sense.
Okay. We get guff about this, folks. I'm just going to tell you that if you don't want to know too much about Deadpool 3, which again is coming out till next year, you want to jump ahead in the show a couple of minutes here, because there will be spoilers. Because for the first time ever, when I was, again, researching today's show and was looking at the very same photos and video that Aaron was just talking about, the British press also has the log line for this film, which gives away a surprising amount. So are we ready, Aaron?
Let me blow the horn. Okay, we're clear. Go for it.
Okay, the klaxon has been sounded. All right. Here is supposedly the gist, so to speak, on Deadpool 3. Hugh Jackman returns to the role despite his death, which, remember, in Logan happened in 2029. In Deadpool 3, we'll reportedly see Ryan Reynolds' anti-hero traveling in time to 2029 to save Wolverine from his fate, and as a direct result, these guys corrupt the multiverse and are then pursued by Mobius. As in Owen Wilson's character, Mobius from Loki?
Wow.
So now this is does it become a prequel that happens before the Loki series, or does this happen concurrently with the Loki series? There's a lot of questions that now stem off of that.
Toward what you just mentioned about the two of them seeming to fight in front of a crumbled 20th Century Fox logo, the other piece of info I want to throw on the fire here is you must have seen the news about Jennifer Garner.
Playing Elektra?
To play Elektra in this movie. And remember,
I think also Affleck is being brought back for Daredevil as well. I think there's a few. I mean, God, we might even get the old Fantastic Four cast back with Jessica. That means we get Chris Evans back as Johnny Storm, too, if that happens.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So many things to unpack with just that one sentence you laid out there, Jim, right?
This suddenly gets really, really interesting because it's not a prequel. It's a sequel. It's a live-action version of What If. And again, all of it filtered through the Ryan Reynolds comic sensibility. By the way, just a Wolverine side story here. Hugh was a last-minute substitute for... In fact, I want to say it was Doug Ray Scott who had originally been cast as Wolverine, but he was working on Mission Impossible 2, injured his back, and then couldn't go into the X-Men movie. And so 3 weeks into production, that's when they hired Hugh Jackman. But I'd always heard prior to Doug Ray that there had been somebody that Bryan Singer had really, really, really wanted. And I just today discovered this. Care to hazard a guess?
I'm going to default with Danny DeVito. It's the most logical choice I can think of at this moment.
I have to admit, I love me some Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
But sadly, no. It was Viggo Mortensen.
Wow. Now, I'm trying to think of a timeline of how long after that was Lord of the Rings.
The X-Men movie does not arrive in theaters till July of 2000. Now, it has to shoot to make that deadline I want to say it has to start no later than September. So Viggo Mortensen meets with Bryan Singer late winter, early spring of the year 1999. And Viggo, he turns down the role, but for two reasons. One reason is he lets his then 10-year-old son Henry read David Hayter's script, the original script for X-Men. And the thing is, Henry is a real Marvel fan. Henry knows, the X-Men backwards and forwards, and he literally goes to his dad. It's like, Dad, they made a lot of changes. And Henry goes with Viggo to the meeting and brings this up, and Bryan Singer's kind of like, artistic license, kid. And more to the point, movies are different than comic books. And Henry is just not impressed with this explanation. And then Viggo, the other thing, he actually talks about this on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast. And he says, beyond the fact that my son didn't like the script, it's like, the thing that bothered me at the time was like when it came to committing to the X-Men was if I signed the contract that 20th Century Fox was offering, I was then locked into this endless series of movies, playing the same character over and over again. And I was nervous about that. So that's why he says no to Wolverine. Now, jump ahead just a month or two, and Peter Jackson reaches out and is wanting to sign Viggo to play Aragorn in all three of the Lord of the Ring movies. He says yes to that, which again, now wait a minute, didn't you say that you didn't want to play the same character over and over and over again in a movie? And,
well, that was different. X-Men is an endless series of movies, whereas Lord of the Rings, well, there's only 3 books. That's where it ends. I see a beginning, a middle, and an end.
But the kicker, the son also reads the Lord of the Rings script and says, oh, Dad, this one's good.
Yeah.
So it's like, as you mentioned, just 3 movies. And the son signs off on the Lord of the Rings screenplay.
So is Henry working in a Hollywood studio right now as a producer? I mean, he should be, right? He knows how to pick them.
We should follow up on that. But X-Men start shooting in Toronto in late September of 99. Lord of the Rings starts shooting in early October of that same year down in New Zealand. They literally launch at the same time. Now, mind you, because we're shooting 3 movies back to back, the Lord of the Rings shoot continues till December of 2000. But it's hard to fault that decision, that logic. He picked right.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But if Doug Ray hadn't hurt himself while shooting Mission Impossible 2, which I guess we should also mention here, if you want to learn more about the Mission Impossible movies, you want to check out Drew Taylor and Charles Hood's brand new Mission Impossible podcast. Well, it's brand new because it's now the official Mission Impossible podcast, but light the fuse. So go check that out, folks. Drew and Charles are doing some good stuff. And by the way, folks, when we get back from this break, we're going to share even more stories that movie stars have recently shared in regard to Marvel movies.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Your boss is going off at you for missing a deadline, and you swear the clock just moved backwards. Suddenly, you remember the pack of Tic Tacs on your desk. Now you're riding horseback on the beach, the smell of citrus in the air. And what's this? Your boss is sitting behind you, breathing heavenly fresh mint? Refresh your mouth and mind and share your good vibes with Tic Tac.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
This is that interesting time of year where summer blockbusters of all hue are coming through the door. And so there's a lot of performers out there doing interviews right now. And we just mentioned Mission Impossible, which Dead Reckoning Part 1 opened in theaters today, July 12th. Did you see that interview that Hallie Atwell did? And she talked about how close we came to not having the ending that everybody loves to Avengers Endgame.
Oh, really? Was she playing coy, saying she wasn't available for shooting unless they threw gobs of money at her for a couple of scenes? Or what was the holdup there?
Well, no, it was kind of interesting. It actually dates back to Captain America Civil War, which arrived in theaters May of 2016. And what Miss Atwell talks about is they are literally getting ready to shoot Peggy Carter's deathbed scene. And in the background of this shot, there was a framed photo of Peggy and her husband, the husband that she married after, Steve's dead. He's never coming back. And the several kids that she had with this gentleman. And they are seconds, before shooting the scene when a Marvel producer looks at it and goes, nope. Walks into the scene, literally pulls the photo out of the background. And it's like, why are you doing that? And it's like, I want to have options.
She must remain pure for Steve and Steve alone.
Well, just the whole notion was we want an open playing field just in case we want to do something different here. And if we show her married and show her with kids, we can't go. So what's fascinating to me is that's May of 2016 that comes out into theaters. And that's Anthony and Joe Russo, who also wrote that movie. And we've talked previously about the war room for Infinity War and Endgame, where it's the giant whiteboard of all the characters going in all different directions and every story thread they're trying to pay off.
Right.
And it's just the whole notion of, well, wait a minute, we're not tied anymore to Agent Carter being married and having kids. It's like, let's explore that. And that ultimately leads to the ending that we all love. Okay, on the other hand, we have Robert Downey Jr. out now doing press for Oppenheimer, which opens in theaters next Friday, July 21st.
Wait, is he in that? Is he producing it? What's his connection to Oppenheimer?
He's one of the many folks playing famous scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project.
Oh, okay.
Though what's kind of interesting is he talked about how, after 11 years of making Marvel movies, and to get tapped to be in a project like Oppenheimer was the notion of, oh, all right, I have to step away from the style of acting I've been doing for the past 11 years. And he said, I was able to do it. Now, mind you, one of the reasons he was able to do it is coming off of Endgame. He and his wife and their production company, Team Downey, had made Doolittle, which you might remember crashed and burned at the box office. He just talked about it was such a humbling experience after coming off of the giant Marvel movies to suddenly have a project where, after everybody loved everything that you did and,
right,
applauded, to suddenly have this thing that nobody wanted, and you would work so hard. And it was just sort of this wake-up call that it's okay to be humble. It's okay to be humbled. It's like, oh, I thought it was going to be in another hit, and this was going to be to launch an entire franchise of Doolittle movies, and yeah, that ain't happening.
Did you happen to catch his series that he had produced, the Perry Mason on HBO?
I enjoyed the hell out of that.
I did as well.
It was so depressing that they sent Perry to jail at the end of season 2, and I was so looking forward to him getting out in season 3, and now that's not happening.
Right,
So,
yeah.
I hope the Downeys do shop it around.
Yeah.
Though Downey, in telling this story to the folks on Oppenheimer, also shared, that he bookends his career, or the moments in his career that smartened him up, between Doolittle and an earlier movie. In fact, it's his first at Disney. The Shaggy Dog remake that they released back in March of 2006. This is a Tim Allen starring vehicle, but Downey plays the villain in the thing, Dr. Kozak.
Okay.
And the thing of it is that he's reading the script, and it's a really bad script. But again, this is Robert after his personal problems and his several trips to jail and that sort of thing, and he needs it to work. Mm-hmm. And so he goes to Disney and says, "You're going to protect me here, right? I mean, this is pretty silly on the page, and if this is done the wrong way, I'm just going to look like an ass." And Disney's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We will protect you, Robert. We love that you're on board with this movie, and don't worry about it." Anyway, long story short, Shaggy Dog, the remake, comes out March of 2006. It does very poorly at the boxes. More to the point, the reviews particularly go out of the way to go after Robert. And lesson learned here, you can't trust the studio. More to the point, I need to make better choices. I need to be smarter about my career. So the interesting thing is he goes in the exact opposite direction. He goes from a family-friendly comedy to the very next thing he does is David Fincher's Zodiac, about the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful movie.
It is. But that's one of the other things that sort of put him on Favreau's radar for Iron Man, to the effect of, okay, this guy is willing to take some risks. And he, evidently he got a lot of teasing on the set, to the effect of they would put the Disney, you have to understand, in the final moments of Disney's Shaggy Dog movie, Robert becomes a dog and is leaping around a courtroom with a tongue hanging out of his mouth and a tail sticking out of his pants and that sort of thing. And it's just sort of like, when I looked at Shaggy Dog and I looked at Zodiac, you're the guy for Iron Man. That's the way I want to go. Weird little bend on the story, though. Original Iron Man comes out in May of 2008, obviously does great business. By April of the following year, shooting has begun on Iron Man 2, but then in August of the same year, Disney buys Marvel. And you got to remember, Robert is not a fan of Disney at this moment. But it's like, that's not going to impact us making movies, right? And the folks at Marvel say, "Oh, don't worry about it, Robert. We're going to be fine." And then May of 2010, Iron Man comes out, and October of 2010 is when Disney acquires the rights to distribute the Marvel movies that Paramount had a contract with Marvel Studios to make. So we're talking Avengers, Iron Man 3, all of that. And Robert is not happy. It's been suggested that, you remember how much Robert was getting paid to do the final Iron Man movies, and how upset Ike Perlmutter was about that? There's a number of folks I've spoken with at Disney. It's like, yeah, if we had treated Robert a little bit better with Shaggy Dog, I don't think he would have screwed us over quite, really put the thumb screws to us.
Right.
We wouldn't have had the $60 million payday. And it's just sort of, long story short, be nice to your actors. But speaking of comedies, another person who's out doing press right now is Adam Devine. He's in the brand new Happy Madison comedy for Netflix, The Outlaws.
Okay.
And he's actually been talking about, it's interesting how these comedies are showing up on Netflix, but there's so few comedies now being released to theaters. And what was interesting is Adam sort of laid this at the feet of Marvel, to the effect of, well, if you look at these big comic book movies, they're $150, $200 million. And more to the point, they have all of these really funny characters in them, whether it's Rocket or again, like an Iron Man. How is a $20 or $30 million comedy going to stand up against that?
As things change, as all of the streaming services, there were so many companies that wanted to get into that game because Netflix was just making so much bank from it. And so everybody put their chips on the table, and then they realize that it takes a lot of money to be in the game. And then you need the subscribers. First you need to invest all the money to make the content. Then you got to put it out there. And then if the people don't come, well, you're screwed with this huge tab. And so I kind of feel that there's a certain level of movies, kind of like Hallmark Channel. There's not a lot of explosions in Hallmark Channel movies, I'm thinking. Not a lot of, alien invasions, people transforming into monsters, people flying. None of that usually happens in a Hallmark movie. So that means the budget isn't spent on special effects. It's basically go to a location, have a nice romantic script, boy meets girl, they fall in love, stuff like that. And these things that he's talking about, Adam's talking about, like comedies that cost like 20 or 30 million. I think the streaming services are going to be like, hey, we need content, but we also have a budget. So let's start focusing on movies that we can tell that don't necessarily need a huge budget. And that becomes, things like The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I don't really think that should cost $1 bazillion to make that movie about a nerd that likes toys and who's never had sex. That should be a pretty simple, but you're spending it on your celebrities and the talent behind the cameras. That's about it, but not special effects. So, yeah, I think a lot of these movies, and he's right, there isn't a lot of notice in the theaters. I mean, hell, if The Flash is the biggest disappointment in box office history for a superhero film, what's that going to be for your average romantic comedy? They don't have a lot of breathing room.
Interesting you bring that up, because our friend of the show, Jim Schul, went to the theaters and saw The Flash and really had high praise for the woman who played Flash's mom. She's the character that sets this story in motion. The Flash has to care enough about his mom, and you have to be invested enough in the story to care about what the Flash goes through for the next 2 hours or so, because that's what drives the story forward. He said, and they got this wonderful actress who delivered this wonderful, sincere performance. And the thing of it is, because you bought into that the Flash would try to work this hard to save that woman, he said it was an enjoyable time at the movies. It's not the greatest thing I've ever seen, but it had some emotional weight and it had some fun stuff in it. I mean, I got to tell you, I am being the typical lazy 60-plus-year-old white male. I am waiting for this to show up on Max so I can watch it in the comfort of my home.
Right.
But I will definitely watch this when it shows up. And speaking of movies I will probably wind up watching at home, Shang-Chi 2. Face it, the end of that film teased Shang-Chi will return. But Simu Liu, who's out now doing publicity for Barbie, he plays one of the Kens for that film, which opens on July 21st. He got asked about what's going on with Shang-Chi 2. And he said, what I keep hearing is it's now been pushed to the other side of the Kang Dynasty and Secret War. And he's obviously disappointed because he wanted to get back to the character who enjoyed making the film, but at the same time, supposedly Shang-Chi will be in the mix with these films coming up. So
I'm worried that there's like going to be the 6-year gap between episodes 1 and 2 where it's like, do you even care anymore? Usually you kind of have to strike while the iron is hot, and if you put them up on a shelf for, almost a decade, it's kind of hard to get all excited about, I don't know, did Avatar 2 have that similar problem? Like, I know it made a lot of money, but do you think it would have made more money if it had come out within, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 or even 5 years of the original instead of like a decade or two?
Do not know what to tell you. I know from friends who, work in effects and several of the houses that worked on that project that, there's stuff they did in Avatar 2 that just were not possible in the first film.
Sure.
That, the technology, performance capture technology and the rendering that just were not there.
Now, I mean, the movie's immaculate, and sometimes I forget that, like, almost nothing in the entirety of in the movie is real or physical. Like, it's all computer generated. It's like, at what point do you start talking about that movie on fine tuning as an animated film?
I have argued that point, actually. Yeah. There's so many of the top films, that if you look at the top grossing films of all time, and you look at their runtimes, you determine how much animation they have in them. They actually have more animation in their running times than some of the Pixar films, some of the Disney films. And it's just, the whole notion of, no, I'm a live action. Don't say I'm animated.
Okay.
Speaking of animated characters, though, the one final story that came out of people doing press this week, and James Gunn, of course, has been out there talking up the casting news for Superman Legacy. And by the way, did you see that Nathan Fillion is going to join this as the Green Lantern, which kind of cool, especially given he's already voiced this for the Warner Brothers home entertainment animated features, the DC films there, and he did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
But anyway, Gunn was talking about how everyone was sad when we saw the very last Stan Lee cameo, which it was an animated character in the original, the first of the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stan was in really poor health at this point. In fact, what he talked about is when he was working on the screenplay for Guardians 3. And then the project is kind of put on hold because Disney, I mean, we all know the backstory. But the thing is that for James, there was a ticking clock. The notion was, you okayed the script. I want to go record Stan. Because I want him to voice a character in Guardians 3. And what's interesting is the characters in the movie. Do you remember Lambshank, the kind of horrifying human lamb child thing? Well, there's a great moment in the movie where Mantis sees him and screams.
Yeah.
And then, oh, no. I wasn't screaming at you. I was screaming at that person behind you. You look cool.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That was Stan's character. What James envisioned doing was finding Stan and getting him to record a couple of lines of dialogue and then having that in the bank. And then when they finally shot Guardians of the Galaxy 3, they'd have this material to have Lambshank talk in Stan Lee's voice.
I heard a really tragic story about all of that. Mm-hmm. When James Gunn went to go record, because he didn't have any video equipment, he just needed the audio for the voice, right? Mm-hmm. So he showed up in the hospital room, and there was this annoying beeping sound from all of the medical equipment Stan was hooked up to. So they unplugged it, and then he couldn't read. He couldn't say his lines, and they couldn't figure out why. And it's tragic. Tragic.
You're gonna get us in so much trouble here. I mean, that story does have a tragic. I mean, again, James is fired by Disney in July of 2018, and that very same year, November 12th, we lose Stan at the age of 95. And the fact that 18 months later, all is forgiven, he's back in-house, and the fact that so much time and energy wasted on nothing, and they could have gotten that recording of Stan. So, okay. We promised at the top of today's show we would talk about Secret Invasion Episode 4, which debuted today on Disney+. And as you mentioned, they finally spent some money.
Yeah.
And again, folks, going to be some spoilers ahead here. All right, so let's talk about what we got right last week.
Well, I mean, they started off, thankfully they didn't draw it out and make it a big deal. They gave us a little flashback. She turned herself into a super Skrull. Oh, and by the way, the healing ability, that comes from Extremis from Iron Man 2.
Oh,
yeah.
That's where we saw that name.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That was, I couldn't remember, there was the Groot, there was the Jotunheim, and et cetera, and I couldn't remember Extremis at the time. So that ties us back to Iron Man 2. That gives them their healing power. So they did a quick flashback. They show her do a little, I give myself magic abilities, and then go back to the road where her bullet wound magically heals, and she's up and off, and we're back to storytelling. So hurrah for that.
Okay. So let's talk about the Rhodey situation.
Yeah, how long's he been a Skrull now? That's the question. When did he get abducted or pod person replaced?
Okay.
And how long's that been going on?
Let me share what Kevin Feige had to say about this earlier today. So he said, we needed to have a character that one would not expect to be a Skrull. It was very, very early days when we pitched this concept to Don, and he very much was into it. and into being able to play with different sides of Rhodey that we hadn't seen before. And when we have amazing actors like Don Cheadle, who have been with us for so many years, we pretty much treat them like partners in the creative collaboration. So Don was on board for this reveal of playing and revealing yet another side of Rhodey, and revealing that, yeah, Rhodey has been a Skrull.
I've got it. We need to go back and look at the last time that Rhodey has been wearing his mechanical legs to help him walk.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, he had a back injury, couldn't walk for a while. And so a couple of movies, he had been wearing some metal leg helpers to help him get around. Mm-hmm. Right now, he ain't got no leg helpers. So maybe that's when the switch happened.
The one thing, if you press folks at Marvel Studio, what they will admit to so far is that Rhodey has been a Skrull at least through Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh, really now?
Yeah.
Well, that was only like a single appearance, wasn't it? Didn't he get nominated for an award for showing up for about 60 seconds of screen time in the first episode or two?
All right.
That's not a lot of meat to chew on.
Well, the concern is at Marvel Studios that, especially out ahead of Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, you don't want to screw with people's memories of Infinity War and especially Endgame. Because think about it. Tony Stark sacrifices everything. But if you remember that scene from the movie, you see Tony sort of stumble and sit down. And the very first person that comes over to him is Rhodey. The whole notion is that at Marvel Studios, it's the effect of, don't undercut that.
Sure. Okay.
I get the whole notion of, if we're looking ahead to Secret Wars and we're looking ahead to, our Super Skrulls and what this, potentially will go forward into the MCU. But it's like, you don't want to undercut the emotional weight of that moment.
Well, see, now that was going to be a question of if Rhodey is a Skrull, who else could possibly be a Skrull right now that we don't know about? And so if it seems like they're drawing a line in the sand saying it can't happen during Endgame because the emotional weight must not be undercut. And while I get that, the fact remains that the Skrulls have been here since like the 1990s. So they've had a lot of time for their infiltration. But let's see, Tony Stark being the first, superhero that we encountered in modern day. The heroes are rather new. The Skrulls have been around for a bit, but the heroes are fresh and new. So we haven't had a lot of opportunities for there to be a swap happen just yet. But it makes me want to go, all right, Star-Lord, how long have you been on planet Earth now? Do a little quiz on these characters and see if they're who they say they are.
Well, now it's interesting you say that, because this is supposedly going to be a button that is hit and hit hard moving forward in the MCU. But I'm hearing from folks at Marvel, and again, with the word coming down from Disney to the effect of, we have this $70 billion that, been saddled with, through the Fox acquisition, and Disney Plus isn't making the money that, we expected. And so we're kind of playing slippy slidey with various projects that are coming down the pike. And in fact, we have the Thunderbolts coming.
Which, by the way, is being turned into a Hallmark romantic comedy with no action whatsoever, but a tremendous love story.
You're joking, but the thing that I'm finding fascinating is I'm being told by folks at Marvel Studios that the Young Avengers is now a priority project, and that's largely because it will be cheaper on the staffing up actors side.
Oh, yeah. Well, they haven't been with the studio for very long. They've got no demands. They're just happy to be working. They're young and inexperienced. Plus, if you wait for another 5 or 10 years, they won't be the Young Avengers anymore. They'll just be back to Avengers, middle-aged Avengers.
There we go.
So, yeah.
But they are finaling the Marvels right now, getting it ready for its release later this year. And it's what's making things interesting is between the SAG strike and the writers' strike is like we need to make sure that the Marvels, which has Ms. Marvel, who will be a member of the Young Avengers, does a better job of setting this up, because we suddenly want that movie faster.
Mm. With the Marvels trailer right now, and this ties into Secret Invasion. The Secret Invasion's done such a great job of being able to tell you what time we are in based on the goatee that Nick Fury is rocking at that time, or whether he's even sporting the eye patch or not, right? Yep. If we're in present day, he's got a big old bushy gray disheveled beard with no eye patch. If we go back to early Avengers days, he's trimmed, he's got an eye patch. So I look at the Marvels trailer and we see him on the space station. He's got his trimmed goatee and he's got an eye patch. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. This doesn't jive with the timeline we're currently in right now. And so, yeah, it just makes me wonder, either all of this is going to wrap up with Secret Invasion and Nick Fury is going to go, you know what, I could use a good shave. And then he goes and shaves his shaggy goatee. And then we see him in the Marvels, or the Marvels is set at an earlier time when Nick still had a razor at his disposal thanks to the S.H.I.E.L.D. budget. I don't know.
I have to admit, I'm fascinated by this myself, because right now, those puzzle pieces don't seem to click together. No,
not yet.
All right, but speaking of it, we only have 2 episodes left, and if you're laying down money now, we thought we had a fake-out death at the end of episode 3.
Yeah, do we have another one? Is that what you're asking?
This felt like Maria Hill to me, again.
Yeah, but I like Ben Mendelsohn, so...
I do too,
yeah.
I do too.
I mean, Kobe has been with the gang for a while. She's had a lot of screen time, and it's like if you need to sacrifice a character that hurts, it hurts to lose Maria Hill. It really does. But, man, to lose 2 characters like that back to back, it's like I got to think that he's got to have some healing juice in him somehow, maybe. Maybe he also stepped into the super Skrull machine and got the healing abilities of Extremis. I don't know. We'll find out.
Okay. But, again, we have our President of the United States. We have, an attempt at starting World War III. Going to be interesting to see where we go to from here. Yeah. And as we mentioned, how we get the Nick Fury that looks like this to the Nick Fury that looks, sharp and on his A game up in space. So,
yep.
All right. Well, anyway, speaking of somebody being sharp and on his game, I got to tell you, Aaron, I have been so enjoying the 32nd Street shows that you've been putting, together, your outside podcast project. And you two have definitely been popping the hood and sharing some fascinating stories. So what's up next?
This week is my favorite Greek triplets, pathos, ethos, and logos. And pathos is how you feel sorry for someone, pathetic. Well, that's your Sarah McLachlan animal rescue shelter. Oh, poor puppy, I feel sorry for you. And then ethos, that's, well, I trust that person. 4 out of 5 doctors chew Trident. Oh, I trust doctors. I will chew Trident. And then logos, that's your logic. Well, stats and numbers show that we're up 90% this quarter, Bob. You should invest with us. And so they are the oldest tricks in the book, but they're all Greek. They all are about how the brain works and what we use to influence you. So be on the lookout for the Greek triplets, pathos, ethos, and logos on the next 32nd Street.
Oh, okay. No, that sounds like a must-listen-to show. Holy cow. And we have a couple of shows here we'd also like you to listen to, folks, here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. We, of course, have Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. We also have Fine Tuning that I do with Drew Taylor, and I already mentioned Drew's wonderful Light the Fuse podcast, which again is now the official Mission Impossible podcast. And Brian Gaughan and I just got a new Looking at Lucasfilm out the door, sort of bemoaned what's been going on with Dial of Destiny. And beyond that, we could ask you folks a favor, if you could head on over to Apple Podcasts and rate and recommend, well, not just the show you're listening to right now, Marvelous Disney, but also 32nd Street. That would be helpful. Also, yeah, I know the social media sphere is getting kind of interesting out there. Aaron, you're still on Twitter, right?
Oh, I revel in the chaos. Love it.
Okay.
Love it.
Okay.
Like a pig in dirt. So find
Okay.
me at Azaprod, AZAPROD.
And likewise, I'm still on Twitter, and Instagram is Jim Hill Media. Likewise, we're still on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And let's see, beyond that, if you could do, I keep asking for favors here, but if you really like what you heard here tonight, if you want to go over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be helpful. And I think that's going to do it for this week, Aaron. So on behalf of Mr. Adams and myself, thanks for listening, folks, and we will be back soon.